अस्सलाम वालेकुम, वेलकम टू पॉलिसी बीट्स विद उसामा ज़मानी। आज हमारे साथ एक नए budding emerging and at the same time accomplished journalist who's covering economy and business with Pakistan Profit. She's also contributing with Deal Street Asia, जहाँ पे वो venture capitals और private equity जैसे issues को भी पर बहुत अच्छा लिखती हैं. We have today with us none other than Ariba Shahid. Ariba, thank you for joining us online for this podcast. मुझे पता है आपने travel करना था इस्लामाबाद, लेकिन as you know, the luck would have it, you have us joining in online all the way from Karachi. पहले तो ये बताओ आप कैसी हैं और कराची के कैसे हालात हैं?
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's amazing being back at IPRI in a virtual way or whatever. It's nice. Karachi हालात are really bad right now. अभी आज बारिश हुई है और आज मुझे ऑफिस भी जाना था and I haven't gone to work. So work from home Zindabad. But it's bad. Like the rains are bad and things are getting worse. Yeah, like in terms of the weather because अभी एक हफ्ता और शायद ये सीजन रहेगा तो थोड़ा मसला
मतलब
है.
पूरे मुल्क में भी like the situation is pretty bad even in areas जहाँ पे drainage की facilities are not so good. But especially in Karachi and even like the rest of the province in Sindh, even like southern Sindh, northern central, जिधर भी बात करें जहाँ heavy downpour हो रहा है, मतलब I can imagine and I can relate. Even in my hometown in Sindh, मतलब things are pretty bad. So I can understand.
I saw a picture of Chandigarh Road today, like Chandigarh Road where all our bank head offices are. And there's knee-level water there for someone that's short like me. But और हमारा office भी Chandigarh पे है, so I'm so glad I did not go today. But if Chandigarh is flooding, it tells you the state of Chandigarh basically.
Yeah. And I mean, I can imagine कि मतलब चीजें किस तरह, मतलब कितना बुरा हालात हो जाते हैं ना इस तरह के मौसम में. And it happens every year. I know Karachi at large is like, struggling with a lot of apathy हर साल. पर what do you have to say about this? कि एक जगह पे हमारे पास apathy है and then every time you have some other people, they throw in this term कि भाई देखें कराची कितना resilient है, या Pakistanis in general are so resilient. Do you think is it ये कोई apt description है मतलब लोगों को describe करने की, मतलब for how long can you put people in that perpetual state and then expect them to keep on bouncing back by not providing them with sustainable solutions? मतलब तुम्हें, I know this is not, we are little digressing over here, but तुम्हें लगता है कि मतलब ये एक सही तरीका है to sort of relate with the plight of the people in Pakistan?
Honestly, the worst part about being in Karachi or being a Pakistani is we have no choice but to be resilient. मतलब resilient ho ya rote raho. So I think people choose to be resilient instead of crying over the situation they're in. So ye ek thoda masla hai, but I think people should have the option to choose to be resilient rather than be forced to be resilient. और ये एक मसला हमारे यहाँ है. And as far as the rain, मतलब this is so the rain is again an issue just because of the fact कि हमें पता है कि हर साल इस time में बारिश होगी. These are not unexpected rains hitting Karachi because what do you call it? It's off season. This is a seasonal rain जो हर साल होना है, लेकिन मिटिगेट नहीं होता क्योंकि एक्सपेक्टेड है. कराची के लोग तो बर्दाश्त कर लेंगे, पंजाब के लोग बर्दाश्त कर लेंगे, सिंध के लोग बर्दाश्त कर लेंगे. आई थिंक दिस रेजिलियंस एंड ऑल्सो हमारी आवाम की भी जो है ना, व्हाट यू कॉल इट, द राइट वर्ड, मे बी reluctance to stand up for their rights is one reason why people think that they can get away with stuff like this. Because बारिश होगी, रोए धोएंगे, उसके बाद जब बारिश खत्म हो जाएगी, पानी खत्म हो जाएगा, तो सब अपने चुप हो जाएंगे. तो I think that is one reason.
Yeah, I think there's a need to have that, एक constant demand की जरूरत है कि why we need to fix this thing. It's not something that we can put off for a year कि अच्छा यार अब अगले साल आएगा फिर देखा जाएगा, फिर we have to bear with this. And eventually I can imagine कि मतलब the amount of money it actually costs to get everything fixed, repaired, especially उन जगहों पे जो कि basically flood से जूझ रहे होते हैं. Like अगर कराची की बात कर लें, मतलब जो ground level portions में रह रहे हैं, जो ग्राउंड लेवल घर पे रह रहे हैं, मतलब उनके लिए बहुत ही मुसीबत हो सकती है.
लोगों की गाड़ियां बह गई हैं, गाड़ियों के अंदर गियर बॉक्स के अंदर पानी आ गया है. Lots of people bought like new appliances, सारे appliances पानी से भर गए हैं, खराब हो गया. तो this is another like हम मसला ये है कि पाकिस्तान में we're not really insured. None of us have disaster insurance, none of us have rain insurance. I don't think anyone really does get that done. So inside situation में when you deal with the aftermath of rain, ना सिर्फ आपको PTSD है घर से निकलने से, but आप घर में रह के भी आपको, you won't believe me, but I haven't gone out of the house in what 3 weeks because मुझे इतना PTSD कि मैं बारिश में बाहर निकलूंगी मैं पानी में फंस जाऊंगी. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, you know, when I was back home in 2010, 2011, itni zyada barish, literally there would come a time like, you know, even when you're sleeping, like, matlab, I think, जैसे ही आपको नींद आती है आपको तब भी महसूस हो रहा होता था कि शायद, you know, मेरे चेहरे पे शायद अभी भी बारिश, you know, बरसात का पानी जो है वो बह रहा है. So literally, matlab, it can be traumatizing for people, and it's basically the toll that it leaves behind. और मैं आज वो भी देख रहा था कराची में, probably some area, you know, I don't know what exact part of Karachi was it, but वहाँ पे जो furniture businesses वाले हैं उनके सारा जो भी furniture था, it all ended up getting destroyed. So I mean, you know, we can go on and on about
I mean, this basically shows that there's a gap in the insurance industry. One, two, businesses should not worry about their inventory because of rain. मतलब थोड़े बहुत nominal losses is okay, but like major significant write-offs, this is not something that should happen in a country in 2022.
Yeah, that's another potential area, मतलब जिसको देखा जा सकता है. पर मैं थोड़ा वापस से आता हूँ, क्या कहते हैं, अपने उसके ऊपर, टॉपिक के ऊपर. बट टॉपिक पे आने से पहले मैं तुमसे थोड़ा पूछना चाहता हूँ कि थोड़ा बताओ अपने बारे में कि तुम्हारी ये जर्नी किस तरह से रही, you know, in terms of becoming a journalist. Was it accidental या तुमने इसी तरीके से प्लान किया था कि मैंने लाइफ में एक अच्छा और एक you know accomplished and you know वो भी उस एरिया में जहाँ पे बहुत बहुत कम खवातीन मिलती हैं, इकोनॉमी एंड बिजनेस के एरियाज को कवर करते हुए.
So thank you for the kind words, but हुआ ये कि I never thought I'd be a journalist. Like 0% thought, 0%. I never thought I'd be a journalist. Wow. In fact, my friends now they go like, तुम्हारा ये बचपन से प्लान था, तुमने हमें कभी बताया नहीं है. Like, नहीं, it wasn't my plan.
Was it like your secret goal?
No, it wasn't. So they think it's one of my secret goals, and I swear this was never the plan. But हुआ ये था कि when I call myself an accidental journalist, I mean it, because I don't know the alif bay of journalism in the sense that I learned on the job. In the sense that one day my boss was like, please add a good shoulder to the story. And I'm like, okay. Shoulder? Matlab supporting evidence ya kya? So he's like, no, shoulder wo hota hai headline ke niche wali line jo thoda summarize karti hai. Oh, shoulder add karna hai. So this is how much I learned on the job. But
that's a new word for me. Even if I were your subordinate and you would shoulder add karna hai, I would take it figuratively. Like
I'd be like, oh, support.
Yeah, exactly.
Structure.
Yeah.
So that happened. But I learned on the job. I never planned on being a journalist, but it was an unplanned career move that I made, in the sense that I thought it through, but I didn't really, I was like, you know what, let me give it a try. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, I'll change. But I gave journalism a try, and this was really cool for me because over the years I had grown, you know, really curious about things. Like, oh, how does this work? Oh, why does this happen? What is this? What is that? So this job essentially gave me the chance to answer my questions. So every time I have a question out there, I go like, you know what, let me find the answer and let me write about it. So that is how it came to be. But the one thing that has helped me so far is, one, you're right, absolutely you're right. The things that I do talk about, the things that I do write about are very male dominated. I go to press conferences, I go to events, I go to interviews, and most of the time I'm the only woman in the room. So it's not just about me being the only person from the media side, but also from the other side as well. Sometimes you're the only woman in the room. And this happens across the board, regardless of whether you're in the government or a government financial institution or a private sector financial institution. It's there. But I feel that one reason why I continued with this job is because of the learning opportunities. Regardless of it being male dominated, I feel that I still got decent enough opportunities.
Interesting. और फिर तुमने कितना अर्सा पहले basically start किया था, in this?
So it's been 2.5 years. 2.5 years ago, I joined Profit, January 2020, right before the pandemic. And January 2022, I joined Deal Street Asia to cover the startup sector. So isse pehle, I would cover different things at Profit. But then I thought, okay, you know what, how about that add some more weight to the portfolio. So what I did is I joined Deal Street Asia. I work as a contributor there and I write about startups. 3 stories a month most of the time, sometimes more, but usually just 3 stories a month there. There's so much happening in the Pakistani startup ecosystem. So there's always plenty of things to write about.
Interesting. तो मुझे ये बताओ कि तुम्हारा फिर background भी basically was something you did say कि मतलब you never like professionally you were never trained to be
as a
kid, what did you do as a majors?
As a kid, I've always loved econ, so I studied econ. So that's one thing. I wanted to be a hardcore serious economist, but then I thought that this job's fun. And it's a very fun job. Like, jokes aside, some days I'll pick it up and I'll be like, you know what? This guy said this. Let me fact check it. Or I go like, 3 Kokomo 1 pack mein kyun mil raha hai? What is the business behind it? So it's a really fun job, which is one reason why I enjoy every day, because every day is different.
Interesting. Pakistan mein biscuits ka size kyun chota ho jata hai over the years?
Shrinkflation. Shrinkflation.
Wow. I think hum Pakistanis jo hai, matlab we've been facing it for decades. Matlab jo biscuit jiska size bachpan mein matlab theek thaak hota tha, now it has like.
So the reason for Pakistan में ये ज़्यादा significantly हमें feel इसलिए हो रहा होता है because we have our currency is basically in terms of tens.
Okay.
Multiples of tens. तो होता है in other countries you have coins like $1, $2, pennies, cents, ये सब है. यहाँ पे 5 rupee coin भी कम चलता है. तो I remember, like, notice how I said denominations of 10 चलता है. Denominations of 5 and 10s नहीं चलता अब ज्यादा. तो जैसे for instance if कोकोमो 5 रुपए का मिल रहा है तो कोकोमो का next option 7 रुपए नहीं है. उनका next option 10 rupees है. Yeah. If they're at 10, their next option is 15, and 15 is also not preferred because 5 rupee coins are difficult to get back. So then you jump to 20. So that is one reason why Pakistan में फिर manufacturers के पास कोई और option नहीं है. या तो अपने quantity कम करें या तो prices बढ़ा दें, और prices बढ़ाने के बाद they have to jump big steps. And the thing is that we don't realize that their target audience are kids. Exactly. And back when you're a kid, आप बहुत price elastic होते हो कि मतलब अच्छा आज मैं ये बिस्किट खाऊंगी तो फिर मैं आज ये ड्रिंक नहीं पी सकती. तो अब बिस्किट के प्राइस ही बढ़ गए तो I'm done for.
Your budget is out.
Pocket, yeah, your kids have really good budgeting skills.
Oh yeah, they do. I remember मतलब बचपन में यही हो रही होती थी equation कि अच्छा यार 2 रुपए की ये चीज है, and I'm sure 2 रुपए अगर अभी कहेंगे किसी ने तो they're going to be like यार ये क्या कर रहे हो मतलब.
I was an only child, so I never had a budget. So I've never budgeted. I've always been like, I want this thing. I don't care how much the price is. So I never had to worry about the budget. So amma abba leke aa jate the.
Wow, so you had that privilege matlab, huh?
Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Spoiled privilege.
Spoiled privilege. अच्छा तो फिर ये एक चीज बताओ क्या कहते हैं Ariba, since now you're like at times like you're like the sole woman in the room वाली बात हो जाती है as a journalist. What do you have to say for other young girls, other young women, that would want to enter the profession? So unke liye what would you want to say? How should they, get started? And then at the same time, तुम अपने आप को कहाँ देख रहे हो? I mean, I don't want to have this sound like a job interview, but आने वाले 5 सालों में या 1 दिहाई में तुम अपने आप को कहाँ देख रही हो? कि मतलब here's the kind of difference that I would want to make in the in the field and in this domain of journalism जो इस खास niche को cover कर रहा है.
So it's very funny. Just a few years ago, when the men in my family would be having political discussions or economic discussions, and not just my family, but any family friend or whatever, whoever would come over, and if I would chime in, or I'd be like, no, this is not how it's done, or this is not theoretically correct or whatever, I would get like a look like, woman, kya pata? इस तरह की चीजें होती थी. My parents are very different though. My parents have always like free debate, free discussion at home. Sometimes I can go up and tell my dad, no, you're wrong. And he'd be like, oh, really? How? So then उसके ऊपर पूरी हमारी बात होती थी. तो इस तरह की चीजें मेरे घर में तो थी, but मैं जब दूसरे घरों को देखती थी तो मैं थोड़ी परेशान होती थी कि what? But then when I entered out into the professional world, I realized that those people were preparing me. Because that's exactly what it's like. And essentially for the first few times, I felt that there was some resistance in the sense that one, I'm a woman, two, I'm a young woman. If you're a little older, people then go like, हाँ ठीक है, ये age वाली एक process से गुजर के आएंगे. But when I started off, I was 24, and childish. When you're new, you have like a whole childish energy as well. So tackling that and combating the reluctance then was a little issue, but eventually over time was sahi ho gaya. And for the women that want to join this career or any career that is male dominated, you're going to have a little pushback in the beginning. You're going to have to show that you mean business. So your age, your gender does not matter. You are as smart or maybe smarter than the rest of the people in the room. And if you show them that you're uncomfortable being the only woman in the room, that is what gets weird. So kabhi kabar ye hota hai when I go to these events, they try to give me special treatment because I'm a woman, and I go like, no, I'm fine. Because you want to show them that I'm not here to get like special privileges, which essentially agar koi de raha to galat nahi hai, but just to get the respect. Okay, you know what? I'm here because I'm here for work. Is there? So I'll give you an example. So the State Bank hosts a Monetary Policy Committee press conference every few months. This time it was online. There were 15, 20 journalists, and there was one Seema Kamal on the governor on the Monetary Policy Committee on the press conference side. So there was one woman from their side. That was good enough because there were 3 men and 1 woman. That's pretty good ratio. But on the other side, journalist side, there was no woman except me. Which is fine, but I was given the same opportunities. I was given the question to ask. This is more of a thing where we need people to realize that women can talk about things and men talk about. There are no topics that are men specific, and there are no topics that are women specific. And I guess showing that you mean business, and eventually with the quality of your work, with your output, women can do that. But starting off with resistance hogi, you just have to push through it. So I'm not going to say it'll be easy, but once you pass through that, it's going to get better. Yeah.
That's great. Or mere khayal se, most importantly, I think families that can or that aren't doing this already, I think, your experience certainly serves as a very good example. You start providing that enabling environment to your girls at home, and then at the same time, mere khayal mein wo ek tarah se na thoda I think wo thodi jo ek tough environment हमारे यहाँ मिलती है, especially for women, I think you need to prepare them even at your home. And I completely agree. I think our country is it's a very male-dominated country, like recreational spaces or professional areas or. So I, as a man, even, I completely second and concur with your viewpoint on that.
So the people that would be like, oh, woman, what are you talking about, right? They now call me to ask me what my opinion is. So over time, perceptions do change. And the thing is that you can't rely on someone to like you from the get-go. And it's not your job to change everyone's perception. So I also would like to add, if someone is resistant towards you and they're not changing your perception, it's not your responsibility. You continue with your work. So again, for women who are looking to start off in this career, your job is not to appease to everyone out there.
अच्छा अरीबा, दूसरा अब मैं थोड़ा पूछना चाह रहा था, आजकल जिस तरह के हालात हैं, मतलब अब थोड़ी इकोनॉमी के ऊपर थोड़ा डिस्कस करते हैं। स्टार्टअप्स के बारे में थोड़ा बात कर लें। खासकर मतलब जिस तरह का इस पे लिखा भी जा रहा है, आई थिंक उज़ैर डिड राइट अप समथिंग अबाउट स्टार्टअप विंटर्स। सो मतलब इससे पहले कि हम स्टार्टअप विंटर के बारे में बात करें, पिछले साल तक और इवन इस साल के पहले क्वार्टर तक स्टार्टअप एरिया जो है या स्टार्टअप सेक्टर जो है वाज attracting a lot of investments. I think last year probably somewhere around 350 या 360 US million dollars जो हैं वो investments में अट्रैक्ट किए थे। क्या वजह है कि जिसमें मतलब लास्ट ईयर तक थिंग्स वर गोइंग वेरी वेल और इस साल जो है मतलब वो चीज़ें थोड़ा पहले क्वार्टर के बाद जो है मतलब खराब होना शुरू हो गई हैं?
So there are multiple things at play here. One is last year we got to see the impact of cheap liquidity. VCs के पास cheap liquidity बहुत आई हुई थी because interest rates were low globally. तो जो Fed pump in कर रहा था in the system, VCs were able to make the most of that, and they were able to deploy that capital in various regions around the world. पिछले साल venture funding में around the world तेजी नजर आई है. Pakistan was able to see a significant inflow of venture funding because Pakistan के लिए पिछले साल was really important because of the change in regulations. तो कुछ SECP और state bank की regulations में changes के बाद क्या हुआ कि we saw significant inflows. The state bank and the SECP allowed for some things that were not allowed पहले, which made foreign investors feel more confident investing in Pakistan. So एक तो ये reason हो गया कि पिछले साल क्यों अच्छा था. एक और reason ये था कि Pakistan was discovered as a market. मतलब when I mean discovered, I mean कि एक थोड़ा सा एक interest आ गया था कि पाकिस्तान. तो एक ये भी एक एलिमेंट था. कोविड की वजह से बहुत सारे लोग जो है पाकिस्तान वापस आ गए थे अपनी फैमिली वालों के पास. पाकिस्तानीज who came here to start work, to build something here. तो एक बहुत talented set of founders भी पाकिस्तान वापस आ गए थे. तो ये कुछ चीजें हुई थी last year. This year what happened is कि liquidity crunch आने लग गया globally because internationally क्या हो गया कि अब capital is no longer as cheap as it was. तो अब जो VCs पैसे लगा भी रहे हैं तो they're very conscious about their investments because they have a limited amount of money now. तो एक ये चीज है. दूसरी एक और रीजन एक ये भी है कि सीरीज अब स्टेजेस ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट होते हैं. एक होता है प्री सीड, सीड, सीरीज ए, सीरीज बी. पाकिस्तानी स्टार्टअप्स पिछले साल जिन्होंने रेस किया they were mostly प्री मतलब सीरीज ए तक रेस किया उन्होंने. सीरीज बी तक आई थिंक airlift किया था. I don't think I mean I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think there was significant there were a lot of significant series B investments coming in. So early stage investment तब भी आ जाती है. later stage investment में due diligence बहुत बढ़ जाती है. तो एक liquidity crunch और ऊपर से later stage में ये सब ड्यू डिलिजेंस बढ़ना. तो ये एक रीजन है. तो दिस इज वन रीजन व्हाई अभी तक हमने पाकिस्तानी स्टार्टअप्स में सीरीज सी तक हमने कम देखा है, मतलब नहीं देखा है. तो ये सारी कुछ चीजें हैं. बट ऑल्सो आवर स्टार्टअप्स आर वेरी यंग कंपेयर टू द रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. तो हम पिछले साल यंग फेज में थे. नाउ वी मूव्ड ऑन अ बिट. तो ये थोड़ी कुछ रीजंस हैं. इस साल भी पाकिस्तानी स्टार्टअप्स हैव रेज्ड अ डिसेंट अमाउंट, 200 मिलियन प्लस आई थिंक अभी तक रेज कर लिया. But it is said that this was in the first 6 months. This is said that अगले 6 महीने इतने अच्छे नहीं होंगे. लेकिन ये जो रेस किया है ये भी क्योंकि फंड रेजिंग इज नॉट लाइक इन अ लिमिटेड टाइम. होता है कभी कभी फंड रेज पहले हुआ होता है, अनाउंसमेंट बाद में आई हुई होती है, या कमिटमेंट्स 2021 में आए हैं, announcement 2022 में आई है. तो you don't know for sure how much of this is from 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, but keeping all this in mind, liquidity crunch सबसे बड़ा issue हमारा liquidity crunch है. क्योंकि मतलब जिस तरह से पाकिस्तान ने अपने interest rates बढ़ाए इन्फ्लेशन को टैकल करने के लिए, उस तरह से फेड ने भी बढ़ाया. आई थिंक इट्स 1.75 or something. तो उन्होंने जब बढ़ाया तो क्या होता है कि ये capital is no longer as cheap as it was. When it's no longer cheap as it was, what you do is you don't have enough. You don't have money, because VC investments are basically like you make investments. You make 5 investments. 4 of them might fail. One of them would be the next Amazon, Google, whatever. But to have enough money to put into 4 investments or 5 investments, that is the problem at this point.
So वो space shrink हो जाता है basically उस like if VC revenue
so
आए तो मतलब वो उसमें से आपको उतने हिस्से जो previously available थे वो अब आपके पास नहीं होंगे.
So मतलब investors की liquidity crunch है. ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है कि पाकिस्तानी startups अच्छे नहीं हैं कि उनको funding नहीं मिल रही है. Pakistani startups are great, the founders are great, the business ideas are great, localization भी कर रहे हैं, बहुत चीजें हो रही हैं. There's a lot of great stuff happening there. Doom and gloom पूरी दुनिया में हो रहा है because of this. हाँ ये है कि if we look at Pakistan specifically, तो हमारे इंटरनल मसले भी हैं. जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस चलो लिक्विडिटी क्रंच तो ग्लोबली है, लेकिन पाकिस्तान में राइजिंग इन्फ्लेशन है, जिसकी वजह से परचेजिंग पावर कम हो गया. अब आई डोंट नो अबाउट यू उसामा, बट मैंने अपने कुछ खर्चे कम किए हैं. एंड आई कम फ्रॉम अ प्रिविलेज्ड फैमिली, लेकिन मैंने अपने खर्चे इस तरह से कम किए हैं कि जैसे अगर मैं अपने दोस्त से मिलने जा रही हूँ, आई एम ड्राइविंग फ्रॉम माई होम टू हर प्लेस, तो मैं ये सोचूंगी अच्छा चलो उससे मिल रही हूँ, रास्ते में मुझे जितने भी काम करने हैं ना, मैं सारे काम करते हुए आऊंगी ताकि मुझे दोबारा गाड़ी निकाल के ना जाना पड़े, बिकॉज पेट्रोल इतना महंगा है.
Of course.
I made a lifestyle change. I made a few other changes in the sense के अगर मैं पहले एक certain brand of chips खाती थी जो imported है, बहुत महंगे हो गए हैं, अब मैं वो नहीं खाती. Yeah, because things are getting really expensive. और ये बहुत सारे जो startups थे, और जो B2C startups होते हैं, उनका क्या होता था, they would rely a lot on your consumer purchasing power. Even though वो subsidize करते थे, वो आपको vouchers देके ये सब देके, but at the end of the day you would still have to pay something.
Yeah.
So in a time where everyone is saving as much as they can because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, it is very important कि ये सब चीजें भी देखी जाए. और फिर ऊपर से political instability इस मुल्क के अंदर थोड़ी एक मसला है, जिसकी वजह से again if I were an investor या you were an investor, obviously VC investors long term horizon देखते हैं, they don't look at the short term. अब लेकिन अगर हम पाकिस्तान को देखें तो लॉन्ग रन में पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी है. इट्स मतलब इफ वी लुक एट द पास्ट 10 years, 10-year horizon अगर देखें तो 10 years के अंदर I don't know, like in the past 5 years, I think we've had 6 prime ministers or 5 prime ministers.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so that is just an example of this. क्योंकि होता है कभी कभी, I bring it up कि political instability है जिसकी वजह से VCs seem a little uneasy. तो देखो like अरे VCs तो long term होते हैं, तो मैंने बोला हाँ तो पाकिस्तान में instability भी तो long term है.
हाँ, मेरे ख्याल में 6 साल में हमारे पास 4 प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स आ चुके हैं. So
yeah, see exactly 6 years. In 6 years we got Nawaz Sharif out, then we had Shahid Khaqan Abbasi went out. Then we had Imran Khan now. Yeah,
right now Shahbaz Sharif. Yes.
Yeah.
So
four prime ministers, and I'm pretty sure we've had more than 6 finance ministers.
Oh yeah, of course. And
we've had a lot of finance ministers.
I think we've had probably how many?
Dar and Miftah.
नहीं, पिछली वाली में इमरान खान में we had असद.
नहीं मैं 6 years ना.
Oh yeah, of course.
Dar, Miftah, Asad Umar, Hafiz Sheikh, Hamad Azhar for a week, and then Shaukat Tareen, and now we've got Miftah again. So we've got like 7 finance ministers. और अभी दोबारा Dar आ जाए वो भी नहीं पता. We've got like 7 to 8 finance ministers in the span of 6 years. तो फिर आप इसी तरह से यही कुछ फैक्टर्स हैं जो दिखाते हैं कि like we are unstable, we are very unstable in this sense.
So in your, sorry मैं तुम्हें interrupt कर रहा हूँ, तो
no worries.
तुम्हारी नज़र में या तुम्हारे एनालिसिस में like when you're talking to investors, चाहे वो पाकिस्तान से हैं, पाकिस्तान के बाहर हैं, तो तुम्हारी नज़र में मतलब political instability weighs in as like one of the major reasons, despite
not major, it weighs as one reason, because it's just that it's just that what happens is that these are big knee-jerk reactions that impact the economy, that impact consumers. तो थोड़ा सा एक ये मसला रहता है. But again, VCs don't really, when they do their due diligence, probably this obviously does come in कि Pakistan as a country, how is it to invest in? But this is one reason why वैसे भी, like if not just the startup space but like generally as well, foreign investors do seem a little iffy about Pakistan. But again, fundamentals अगर आपके strong हो, economic fundamentals strong हो, तो even with political instability you would get investment. But then again, political instability की वजह से economic fundamentals हमारे weak होते हैं. तो it's like that. Local investors को तो पता है ये सब, and local investors are now used to this. तो local investors को अगर आप बोलो कि हुकूमत बदल रही है, तो like हाँ हमने बहुत हुकूमतें बदलती हुई देखी हैं, तो they don't really care. I mean, this is something so rare and so limited to Pakistan. There are other countries जहाँ पे issues होते हैं. I think Italy is another country जहाँ पे issue होता है कि government बहुत बदलती है. But one of my colleagues at Deal Street, they're from Asia. And when I told them, okay, we've never had a prime minister complete term, they're like, what? Really? Never? And I'm like, yeah, never. So things like this do, like over time, एक perception आपकी बन जाती है.
Like take for example, मतलब although Singapore may not be the best example when it comes to seeing a lot of liberties at the basic level with the public, but it provides you with that excellent example कि political stability आपको एक enabling environment provide करती है in order for businesses to grow, in order for to attract investments from all around the world. And again, it flows in from the fact that you had one good leader, and I'm not saying that we need to have leaders for that longer duration, but again, I think that certainly provides or sort of reinforces the confidence of investors, and also for businesses कि यार हमें एक सकून वाली environment मिलेगी politically to grow, because मुझे इस तरह से लगता है कि political uncertainty जो है ना, जो जिस तरह से अभी पाकिस्तान में है, एक तो जाहिर है मतलब we have the issue with the foreign exchange reserves, then साथ ही साथ मतलब we have a government that's that finds it, and for right reasons, मतलब वो उस तरह के जो decisions करने की जरूरत है, unpopular decisions करने की, I think they lack the appetite to forego the political capital, जो opportunity cost उसके साथ आएगी, वो उसको करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है, और उसके नतीजे में हमें वो एक पूरा एक fix मिल रहा है कि वो decisions नहीं ले पा रहे.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree, because political clout becomes more important than strategic long-term reforms. But to add to that, the thing is that the country is blessed with amazing people, young population, हमारी काफी intelligent है. We have great potential, but it is unfair for people like you, people like me. We're young people. It's unfair for us कि हमारे इस age में, when we're supposed to flourish, when we're supposed to go be out there in Pakistan doing great things for the country, we're worried about stupid, meaningless political gimmickry and instability. So this is unfair. Like I mean, I joke about this a lot, but I lost 2 years of my 20s because of COVID, and now I'm losing the rest because of hyperinflation around the world, but also because of the instability in my own country, जहाँ पे मुझे हमेशा लग रहा होता है कि यार अगर मैं कोई खर्चा कर रही हूँ, तो what if I'm making myself vulnerable for the future? So at this age, you're not supposed to be thinking stuff like this. At this age, you're supposed to be out there making the most of the opportunities you have. So I feel we robbed the youth of something this way.
Yeah.
But startups in Pakistan have been doing. They're building great products. They're building great products. Or I feel that अभी global liquidity crunch की वजह से foreign inflows थोड़ी कम हुई है, but I also believe कि foreign inflows कम हो गए, चलो खैर है, but local investors need to step up their game, क्योंकि आपका ecosystem खड़ा नहीं हो सकता unless you've got good local investors backing your founders. मतलब internally make yourself strong enough and make yourself such a big ecosystem. I feel that is important for Pakistan.
तो तुम्हें लगता है कि ये जो अभी recent onset है startup winters का, मतलब is it going to last too long, or and how bad is it actually for our startups मतलब in Pakistan?
The winter will last for a while जब तक globally because again हमारी dependence international VCs पे ज़्यादा थी, foreign VCs पे ज़्यादा थी, तो it will last for a while until थोड़ा Fed rate cuts ना करे. एक थोड़ा ये issue है. But good startups will continue to get funded. Good startups that are transparent, that have their core business in mind, that are good with investors, that communicate well with investors, that pitch themselves very well, and that have a good story, that relate to an audience, जो artificially अपने आप को market में maintain नहीं किए, जिनके actual एक वो है, good startups will continue to get funded. I strongly believe in that. So winter for some would be very long. Some startups are going to close. And again, startup बंद होना कोई वो नहीं है कि मतलब एक startup बंद हो गया तो fraud है तो ये है, startups बंद होते हैं, they fail. It's completely normal for a startup to fail. It's a risky venture regardless. And investors को भी पता है कि भाई हम बहुत risky venture के अंदर जा रहे हैं, but some of them will make it, and the ones that will make it will become really big. And the ones that don't, the founders now have a story. They know what not to do, and they can come back once again. But the winter, in terms of funding, will be, funding will be dried up for a while until things settle down globally. But in this time, agar local investors agar उठ के आ जाएं, ये जो हमारे conglomerates हैं, जो family offices हैं, they started investing, but at a limited scale. If they come in big, they back ventures, so things could be great.
Risky. I'm sorry, मैं तुम्हारी बात को interrupt कर गया. तुमने, you said that startups are a risky enterprise in themselves. तो मुझे ये बताओ कि we've had some recently we've had some cases के जहाँ पे startups had to close up their operations, Airlift being one of them. How important is it कि मतलब हम transparency को maintain करें, when we're dealing with our investors, ज़ाहिर with our customers, and all those that are actually connected with any startup? How important is the overall transparency?
So Pakistan as a country doesn't have the cleanest of image with regards to transparency. On a very cliche level, Transparency International पे हमारी ranking भी कोई ज़बरदस्त नहीं है. उस तरह से कोई हमारी perception globally for being honest and straightforward वो भी इतनी ज़बरदस्त नहीं है. So things like, and also there is some bias towards Asians when anyone that is not white, in the sense that if we do something wrong, it is applied to everyone from our same clan. We don't have the same liberty as a white guy doing something wrong and getting away with it. So एक थोड़ा ये मसला है. But as far as transparency is concerned, startups need to be transparent. But there also is an implication on the investors, where investors need to do good due diligence. Or ek FOMO hai na, fear of missing out. Investment should not be driven on FOMO, and it should be because aap sirf apne paise ka, agar aap sirf apne paise ke zimmedar hain, to that is completely okay. But if you're running a fund and you're using LP funds, to phir to you need to bring in some due diligence into it. You need to go through the numbers. You need to go through things. You need to. I mean, a lot of foreign VCs invested into Pakistan without having visited Pakistan, which is completely normal in the VC funding world. But then you can't make assumptions on Pakistan because you haven't been here. एक ये चीज़ है. But yeah, ये जो startups बंद हुए, again, global liquidity crunch, यहाँ के local macroeconomics, these things play a big significant role. But transparency is very important. Communicating with stakeholders is very important. Startups spend a lot of money on PR and comms.
Okay.
And when I say PR and comms, I mean advertising, social media influencing, इन सब चीजों में वो बहुत पैसा खर्च करते हैं to set the right story. Which is great. तो वो consumer के साथ तो बहुत अच्छे से communicate.
But that's not the everything, basically.
So when you're communicating with consumers, you've got to make sure you're communicating with other stakeholders as well. Again, these are private ventures, these are private businesses. But since it's in a regulated system, there is some sort of transparency that needs to be there. So there is that, but I really hope that the good ones out there, they continue to raise. Like I said, there are lots of good stories out there. But yeah, no matter what the story is, you have to be transparent, and you've got to make sure that this is not just you. It's a whole system out there.
Yeah. No, I hope the same. और इससे थोड़ा आगे बढ़ते हुए स्टार्टअप से थोड़ा आप जाते हैं ये मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एंड असेंबलिंग सेक्टर की तरफ थोड़ा जाते हैं where we have जैसे सेल फोन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग या असेंबलिंग की बात कर रहे हैं. A lot of these assemblers, they have been coming out with with their concerns कि वो payments नहीं कर पा रहे, और इसी तरह से बहुत सारे businesses हैं that need to make payments to a lot of businesses outside. They're facing a lot of trouble with the bank. क्या चीज़ चल रही है basically, और अगर ये नहीं कर पाते अपनी payments, how bad is it for our growth, and how could we actually mitigate मतलब ये सारी चीज़ जो एक stumbling block जो hit कर रहे हैं manufacturers, इसको किस तरह से navigate या circumvent कर सकते हैं?
So I went to a mobile manufacturing plant a few weeks ago, a month or a half ago or something.
Interesting. And was this in Karachi or Lahore?
It was in Karachi. And I was able to see how mobiles are being made. मेरे दिमाग में ये था कि सारे parts आते हैं बस वो ठक 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 बंद करते हैं, वो यहाँ पे नहीं होता होगा. But it was really nice to see some actual मतलब assembly line में भी थोड़ी सी manufacturing sense था. So it was really cool. And that was the day the guy told me that he had to let go 300 people because क्योंकि उनके LCs clear नहीं हो रहे थे, तो they had no input नहीं था, तो लोग बैठे हुए थे.
And so क्या करें? Precisely are LCs मतलब for
Oh, sorry. Okay. So when you import something, तो when you import something, और especially ये इतने बड़े magnitude पे होता है, तो एक letter of credit बनता है, जिसके through ये LC's letter of credit, जिसके through what happens is the state bank processes your payment with a foreign, like your bank gets an approval from the LC in the state bank मतलब international LC भी approve होके यहाँ आती है. अब पाकिस्तान में मसला ये हो रहा है कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर के LCs अप्रूव नहीं हो रहा है, बहुत कम लोगों के हो रहे हैं. एसेंशियल गुड्स के अभी आजकल हो रहे हैं, बहुत सारों के नहीं हो रहा है. सो एसेंशियल गुड्स आर गेटिंग देयर प्रोसेस डन, बट ऑल्सो वो भी थोड़ा स्लो हो गया. बाकी चीजों के ना होने के बराबर हो रहा है बिकॉज वी हैव अ डॉलर क्रंच राइट नाउ. हमारे एफएक्स रिजर्व्स आर गोइंग डाउन. जब तक IMF का ट्रांच नहीं आएगा, वी डोंट हैव सिग्निफिकेंट रिजर्व्स टू मीट आवर इंपोर्ट बिल. हमारा इंपोर्ट कवर हैज गॉन डाउन टू लाइक 1.3 months ish. तो import cover का ये है कि our current reserves can only cover 1 month and 2 or 3 weeks of our what do you call it, imports, which is alarming. तो ये एक मसला है. और ये भी 1.3 months वो भी है कंट्रोल करने के बाद, जब हमारी फिजूल की चीजें इस मुल्क के अंदर नहीं आ रही हैं. तो ये जो what do you call it, this liquidity crunch on the FX side, what it's done is that banks are not processing LCs. तो बहुत सारे industries में layoffs हो रहे हैं. तो layoffs are happening in conventional industries like ये manufacturing industries ये सब. Interestingly enough, हमारे state owned enterprises के भी LCs जो है ना, वो भी बहुत मुश्किल से प्रोसेस हो रहा है, बहुत महंगे रेट्स पे प्रोसेस हो रहा है, और बैंकिंग सिस्टम उस पे बिल्कुल पैनिक कर जा रही है बड़े बड़े LCs पे. अगर तो this shows that there is a weakness in the system अभी because we lack reserves. तो as soon as IMF का ट्रांच आ जाएगा, फ्रेंडली कंट्री से थोड़े इनफ्लोज आ जाएंगे, हमारे रिजर्व्स थोड़े स्टेबल हो जाएंगे, तो थोड़ा सा फर्क पड़ेगा. लेकिन अभी जब तक ये नहीं है तब तक अगेन विंटर, मतलब हम लोग पीक गर्मी में जो है ना, it's winter for us right now, and we've got to save up as much as we can.
Right. अच्छा, speaking of savings, एक जहन में question आ रहा था. Perhaps you must be the right person to help us sort of expand this area. कि पाकिस्तान ने पिछले चंद सालों में I think हमारी foreign remittances में over $100 billion आए हैं. And why is it कि मतलब इतना सारा we get a lot of forex from a lot of Pakistanis and also businesses sending in money to Pakistan, but वो पैसे टिक नहीं रहे, या उसको हम सही तरीके से यूटिलाइज नहीं कर रहे, या क्या कर रहे हैं मतलब, और थिंकिंग ऑफ सम आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स, या कुछ ऐसे तरीक़ेकार जो ऑलरेडी दूसरे ममालिक ने किए में हों, why can't we help Pak that extra forex that we get, जिससे मतलब we don't have to like after every quarter या after every 1 year हम pillar to post भाग रहे होते हैं कि भाई हम किस तरह से अपने forex के बारे में मतलब कुछ ना कुछ करते रहें.
So वो जो remittances हमारे पास आते हैं, they basically go to families as support. तो वो जो हमारे बाहर बैठे ओवरसीज भाई बहन हैं, वो हमारे मुल्क की खिदमत के लिए पैसे कम, वो अपने खानदान की खिदमत के लिए पैसे ज्यादा भेजते हैं. तो एक तो उनकी savior complex को थोड़ा address करना पड़ेगा. But like even when they send money for their families here, वो families कुछ save करती हैं, कुछ इस्तेमाल करती हैं. But yeah, that money does come in. The state bank came up with a few measures. उन्होंने नया पाकिस्तान certificates बनाए ताकि लोग जो है ना बाहर से अपने पैसे यहाँ save करें. और उसमें काफी what do you call them? They gave very nice terms. जो interest rates और जो terms and conditions उस पे साथ लगाई थी, वो काफी what do you call them? They were very lucrative. So there were attempts to do this, but then again जब आपके मुल्क के अंदर political instability आती है, तो no matter जितना भी lucrative हो, कुछ कभी कभार लोग outflows कर देते हैं, कभी कभार they go like, you know what, हम खानदान के लिए खर्चे के पैसे दे रहे हैं, but we're not going to save in the country, so maybe inflow शायद कम हो जाए या क्या है. अभी State Bank ने बोला है कि there hasn't been a significant outflow because of this, but this is really important कि मतलब जो remittance आती है वो इस्तेमाल होती है. लेकिन एक ये भी है कि हमारे जो फ्रेंडली कंट्रीज से हमारे पास जो इन्फ्लोज आती हैं, we have those, we keep those to support our reserves. But you know, to be very honest, if we look at it this way, reserves build up होना remittance से, it shows one that आपकी internal इतनी capacity नहीं है कि आप अपने खर्चे खुद उठा सकें, आप अपने बाहर बैठे लोगों के ऊपर rely करते हो. The second thing is that it shows that your exports need significant amount of growth. You need to work on your export industry because that is a stable way of increasing your inflows. तो हमें अपने inflows बढ़ाने के तरीके ढूंढने पड़ेंगे.
पर एक्सपोर्ट्स कैसे ग्रो करेंगे, मतलब जब अगेन बात घूम फिर के वहीं पे ही आ जाती है. फॉरेक्स हम जैसे यू स्पोक अबाउट एलसीज, एलसी स्टक हैं. आप कुछ भी एक्सपोर्ट करना चाहें, सर यू आर पार्ट ऑफ द ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन, ऐसे ही आपको चीज़ें आएंगी ना बाहर से. सो आप ना एक जगह पे वो भी नहीं अलाउ कर रहे. सो हाउ डू वी गेट आउट ऑफ दिस कॉम्प्लिकेटेड.
अभी जो सिचुएशन है, इट्स वेरी, मतलब ये तो टेम्पररी है ना कि एलसीज थोड़े दिन के लिए बंद कर रहे हैं, मतलब कर रहे हैं का मतलब थोड़े दिन तक they've slowed it down. It's a very temporary situation. But moving forward, जब चीजें बेहतर हो जाएंगी तो एक ये भी मसला है पाकिस्तान में कि let's say we'll take car manufacturers, या let's say we take phone manufacturers, या whatever manufacturing we have, उसके अंदर significant parts come from abroad.
Yeah.
So yeah, we import, we mix together whatever, and then we make. So what happens is आपकी industries बहुत import reliant हो जाती है. You have import led growth and import led exports. सही है. अब क्या होता है कि over time आपकी country के अंदर थोड़ी localization आनी चाहिए.
Exactly.
जो कि कभी नहीं आती है. The auto sector has not significantly localized in years, even though they had a lot, they've gone through a lot of crises over the years, but they still haven't. So things like these are really important. So ये एक वही वाली बात है, when we're circling back to the same thing we said in the beginning. मुल्क के अंदर political instability जब होती है तो आप political cloud के लिए decisions करते हो. जब आप political cloud के लिए decisions करते हो तो very short sighted. अगर कोई बंदा long sight के साथ आए और बोले कि even though it is a tough decision right now, I'm going to make it because this impacts the country positively in 10 years. That is something we need. We do not have that. Our politicians are very short-sighted because their mind goes, अच्छा अभी के decision next election cycle पे क्या impact कर रहा है. So our politicians think election to election, which is again another thing that is found in developing countries. But this is one problem जिसकी वजह से हमारे exports structurally कभी नहीं बढ़ पाएंगे, because we need to think beyond textiles. And like you said, like I said, mobile companies are downsizing. Companies all around are downsizing. Textile industries are downsizing. Everyone is downsizing right now. And Samsung, the reason is,
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you. Samsung ने आई थिंक हार्डली अपना प्रॉब्ली प्लांट सेटअप किया या किस तरह से, आई डोंट नो वो टीवी का था या सेल फोन का था, आई मे बी गेटिंग द डिटेल्स रॉन्ग हियर, बट they were like almost about to sort of start off their operations, पर मसला ये हुआ कि जी चूंकि उनकी
चीजें नहीं आ
हो
रही
रही
हैं।
थी, पार्ट्स नहीं आ रहे थे, तो they had to lay off people. तो यही इश्यूज हैं आई थिंक फॉर इंडस्ट्री, फॉर सेल फोन मैन्युफैक्चरर्स ठीक है, वो तो बेचारे अभी स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं ना, they'll have to at least start somewhere. But you're right in a way कि मतलब incrementally एक plan in place होना चाहिए कि how do you actually develop those parts within your country.
You start relying on your local people.
Exactly. और इसमें like I'll give one example. Again, I'm not going to cite details, but I think probably यही हुआ था कि over the years, recently I think we had probably investments in the chemical sector itself. I think one or two investors were also interested in setting up a chemical plant, क्योंकि ज़ाहिर है केमिकल्स हम बड़ी अच्छी खासी तादाद में जो है वो इंपोर्ट करते हैं. सो इस तरह के जो छोटे छोटे स्टेप्स हैं ना, आई थिंक we need to encourage those steps. But again, उनको करने के लिए जो हमें एक क्वेश्चन चाहिए in order to get started, उस क्वेश्चन के लिए भी जो है मतलब मतलब कहीं ना कहीं तो आगाज करना है ना. एंड आई थिंक द गवर्नमेंट नीड्स टू सॉर्ट ऑफ हैव इट्स priorities in place and provide that enabling environment fiscally, policy wise, regulation wise to businesses, ताकि वो एक्सपोर्ट लेड ग्रोथ भी करनी है तो उसके लिए कई इनिशियल स्टेप्स तो स्टार्ट हो सकें.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, आपकी इन्फेंट इंडस्ट्री जो भी स्टार्ट हुई है, चलो दे विल फील द बर्न. तो जो इंडस्ट्रीज इतने सालों से हैं, उनको मतलब slowly, gradually, like you can't just set up localization immediately, but एक slow, gradual pace पे होना चाहिए था over the years. जो lack हुआ है, and you're right, lack of foresight. But yeah, no, it's sad to see people losing their jobs.
Yeah. अच्छा,
it's sad, like
no, I of course, matlab at the end of the day, people like us can can get through किसी ना किसी तरीके से, मतलब हम तो जा सकते हैं, navigate कर सकते हैं, but it's actually those people जो हमारे यहाँ लोअर मिडिल इनकम के जो स्ट्राटा में फॉल करते हैं, उनके लिए ज़िंदगी मतलब बहुत ही मुश्किल है, होने वाली है. एंड लिटरली मतलब आई रियली थिंक अबाउट people ke how are they going to get through this entire phase and episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a significant issue.
Speaking about expanding about government's pie, abhi recently super tax imposed kiya gaya. I think somebody did a post over this, probably a thread over Twitter. Again, मुझे अभी नाम नहीं ज़हन में आ रहा था, but again, someone who happens to have a lot of expertise into audits and finance. I think maybe you can help me recall who actually did this. But they actually showed how much businesses in Pakistan, I think Pakistani businesses ही हैं, they're actually making trillions in terms of rupees, and then they're also getting a lot of rebate despite paying taxes. जो उनको rebate आ जाता है वो that is already up and above in terms of what they've already paid. So do you think super tax was the right decision to go forward with, या तुम्हें लगता है कि अभी टाइमिंग उसकी ठीक नहीं थी? Perhaps we could have done that at a later point in time.
So I don't think I saw the thread.
और मैं एक और चीज ऐड कर दूं, क्या तुम्हें लगता है कि टाइमिंग perhaps कभी भी ठीक नहीं हो सकती? क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ the way businesses actually behave, जिस तरह से they group up and then they sort of try and exert pressure over government कि भाई हमारे ऊपर जो है आप कोई tax ना impose करें, given how much rent seeking and elite capture या elite capture जिस तरह से हम देखते हैं. मतलब do you think कि बस ये एक मुश्किल फैसला था और हमने ठीक कर दिया, जिसने भी किया बस ठीक कर दिया?
So these industries that were taxed, it was really right of them to be taxed. Because one, in the way you're taxing the rich, but also these industries were already taxed in some way or the other. तो हमारे मुल्क में एक structural मसला ये कि जो tax देता है ना, उसके ऊपर मजीद बोझ डाल दो tax देने की. So I tweeted tax the untaxed. All right. And then my friend, he tweeted, tax the taxed. So I document the documented. And when you hear the line documented, it basically means you go through the people that have documented themselves and you see that how true that is. तो आप उनके actual tax उनको क्या देना है वो, क्योंकि होता है हमारे मुल्क में जो असल टैक्स सबको देनी चाहिए वो सब असल टैक्स नहीं देते नहीं, कुछ तो देते हैं ही नहीं और कुछ जो देते हैं वो अवॉइड करके या एवेड करके दे देता है. तो द रियल टैक्स अमाउंट डज नॉट गेट कलेक्टेड. तो इन सच अ सिचुएशन एक सुपर टैक्स लगाने की जरूरत पड़ जाती है अपने रिजर्व्स को बोल्स्टर करने के लिए, टू एड इन एडिशनल सपोर्ट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस. सो super tax लगाना काफी आसान है, obviously आसान in the sense that it's an easy quick fix solution, but the long term structural changes के one, you increase the number of people that are documented because उससे आपकी थोड़ी transparency भी बढ़ जाती है, and the second thing you do is जो documented हैं भी ना उनको further document करो, क्योंकि एक ये issue है हमारे मुल्क में. So these are two things, but ये जो structural tax ये जो super tax का जो time है, there's never a good time. These industrialists are all lobbyists. They're all blackmailers. इनके ऊपर कभी भी tax लगाओ तो they will have a backlash. But एक recessionary time में इनके ऊपर tax लगाना और reserves अपने बढ़ा देना, inflows अपने बढ़ा देना अभी, जबकि आप अपने maximum exposure की तरफ आप जा रहे हो domestic borrowing में, तो I think it's a good decision कि हमने tax base को बढ़ाना. तो yeah.
Oh, quite interesting. अभी तो हमने सुपर टैक्स के बारे में बात की, अब जरा रिटेल टैक्स के ऊपर बात करते हैं. अभी रिसेंटली बजट के अंदर मिफ्ता इस्माइल साहब ने कहा कि हम रिटेल टैक्स को इंट्रोड्यूस करवा रहे हैं बेसिकली जो रिटेल बिजनेसेस हैं उनके ऊपर, और वो डिडक्ट किया जाएगा इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का जो आपका यूटिलिटी बिल है उसके अंदर ही. अब मुझे ज़रा ये बताओ, शायद यूटिलिटी बिल में आप काट तो लेते हैं, बट हाउ आर दोज जो रिटेल बिजनेसेस में जो लोग काम कर रहे हैं वो किस तरीके से उसको बेसिकली डॉक्यूमेंट कर सकते हैं, और क्या डॉक्यूमेंट करवाने का तरीक़ेकार इतना आसान है कि वो आराम से फाइलर बन जाएं, और ताकि मतलब जो रेवेन्यू स्ट्रीम आई है उसको आप बड़े आसानी से बता सकेंगे भाई ये यहाँ से आ रही है.
So ये इस तरह की जो चीजें होती हैं, these are very complicated for a country जहाँ पे financial literacy तो दूर की बात literacy बहुत कम है. तो these policies are a way कि आप अपने documented लोगों को बढ़ा दो, आप अपने tax paying लोगों को बढ़ा दो, but it's very complicated for a lot of people. I don't know about you, लेकिन जहाँ मैं
मतलब ये बड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड मतलब मेरे लिए भी.
मैं जहाँ word tax सुनती हूँ मेरी हालत थोड़ी खराब हो जाती है. I go like, oh my god, it's too complicated. मतलब I mean I'm financial literate enough to file my own taxes. I don't, because I feel that I'm going to mess up, I'm going to do something wrong. इस तरह का है, and it's not that difficult, but you know एक tax से एक वो होता है. तो एक ऐसे मुल्क में जहाँ पे मैं पढ़ी लिखी, मुझे टैक्स से घबराहट होती, तो आप सोचें एक आम बंदे को जिसको नहीं पता कि रीबेट का मतलब क्या होता है या एडजस्टमेंट का मतलब क्या होता है, वो कैसे. So these are some things that need to be worked on, but if you're making such a policy, then you need to have a widespread communication campaign as well to go along with it, which is easy to understand. तो इस तरह की चीजें are very important for this. But जहाँ तक रही बात retail tax की या जहाँ तक रही बात उसकी, of course this is not really an indirect tax, but what happens is that I personally feel that the government is relying a lot on indirect taxes as well, which are really bad for people from the lower income streams, because उनके income का वो ज़्यादा बड़ा proportion होता है. हमारे income का proportion वो बहुत छोटा सा होता है, तो incremental तो है, but it's really small proportion for me to actually care, for someone to care. But for some people it makes up like 10% of their budget. तो एक ये भी चीज एक बहुत important है जिसको देखना.
हाँ, मेरी नजर में like retail tax is a good step, but I think in order to document and show कि कितनी progress बनी in terms of expanding your overall tax base, I think though there should be some steps in place जो कि बड़े आसानी के साथ, अब जिसने एक tax pay कर दिया कम से कम वो बड़े आसानी से document हो कि ये तो कहलवा सके कि भाई देखें मैं भी एक tax filer हूँ. So I think we need to sort of.
I paid my taxes last year and मुझे फिर एक बैंक अकाउंट खोलना पड़ा तो my bank was like आप फाइलर हैं तो आप बता दें ना. से हाँ मैं फाइलर हूँ, मैंने पिछले साल में टैक्स पे किया. Then they went through the thing and my name was not on the list. So I called my tax guy and I said, why is my name not on the list? He's like, oh, name dalwane ka alag wo hota hai.
Exactly.
So things like these. The portal itself is very archaic. It's purane zamane ka dinosaur portal. Usko dekh ke gussa aata hai. It's not what do you call it, intuitive. तो इन चीजों में आप करोगे तो नहीं हो सकता. I'll give you an example. A few days ago, एक Netflix का competitor है local, Stars Play ऐसा कुछ. So Stars Play ने क्या किया था कि they wanted to fit into the local market. तो what they did is that उनको पता था कि एक आम बंदे के पास credit card नहीं है, एक आम बंदे के पास लैपटॉप क्रेडिट कार्ड नहीं है, एक आम बंदे के पास लेकिन मोबाइल है. मोबाइल पे वो 10 रुपए के अपने क्रेडिट मोबाइल बैलेंस से वो एक दिन का लेट्स से वो पूरे दिन मूवी देख सकता है.
Okay.
So this is how the private sector thinks. The government needs to think like the private sector in terms of how to make filing your taxes easy. Or how to make it accessible.
Or perhaps it's a better idea to have those people in the government that can think how the private sector thinks like.
The babus in our government, and I'm sorry for using the word babus, but the babus in our government.
But that's a reality in South Asia. Matlab babus kasam se,
So these people have never worked a day in the private sector. They don't really understand how it goes. वो एक अपने CSS pass करके वो एक step by step bureaucratic उसमें से गुजरते. They're the same mold. They think the same way. They don't have any idea how it's done anywhere else. They have no problem solving skills. They are only shuru में तो they're only yes sir. बाद में जब वो बन जाते हैं तो they want their subordinates to only be yes sir. So that is one reason again why हमारे taxing system is terrible.
Yeah, I think in order to think out of the box, you need a lot of critical thinking. You just simply do not.
You need,
कि भाई linear तौर पे सोच लिया कि अच्छा अब ये मैं कर लूँगा फिर ये कर लूँगा. Things don't work like that in the real world. You're going to come across a lot of those unpredictable
situations.
हाँ.
COVID के दौरान I remember कि खैबर पख्तूनख्वा की हुकूमत ने कुछ ads बनाए थे. And it's been 2 years and I still remember Basharullah 6 foot ka fasla. I mean, that is how you instill concepts in people's minds. The whole campaign they came out with destigmatizing, announcing to people that you have COVID, distance, washing hands, sanitizing. इस तरह की चीजों से आप अपने शऊर बढ़ाते हो. You get people more informed. So our government has to think कि ये जो solutions वो ले आते हैं, ये foreign solutions, वो ऐसे मुल्कों में हैं जहाँ पे लोग पढ़े लिखे हैं, जहाँ पे लोगों को समझ आती है. यहाँ पे लोगों को नहीं है. You have to think localized. You've got to localize your product. And again, product market fit देखना पड़ता है. ये सारी चीजें हैं जो एक है कमी मुल्क में कि हमारे policies में ये नहीं देखा जाता कि हमारे मुल्क की क्या dynamics है.
Right. अच्छा अरीबा, someone जो कि सोच रहा है, लिख रहा है इकोनॉमी के ऊपर, तुम्हारी नजर में डिस्पाइट हैविंग हैड अ प्राइम मिनिस्टर, erstwhile प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो हर बार उठ के बताते थे कि भाई ये मसले हैं, he'd throw in terms like trade deficit, current account deficit वगैरह वगैरह. But someone as you who's actually thinking and writing on क्या कहते हैं economic issues, on business related issues, मुझे ये बताओ कि पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी में तुम्हारी नज़र में क्या मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, and especially with the overall economic structure.
There are lots of things that are wrong with Pakistan's economic policy, and I think we've talked about short-term vision a lot. एक need है for long-term goals and policy making that is without political influence. एक वो तो एक need है. एक और प्रॉब्लम ये है हमारे पॉलिटिशियंस के अंदर ही कि if a politician or if a person in government is doing the right thing, वो आ जाते हैं criticism लेके. So for instance, there are lots of things जैसे रुपी को फ्री फ्लोट करना या मार्केट ओरिएंटेड करना, जिसके बाद रुपी डिप्रिशिएट हुआ. इसको काफी क्रिटिसाइज किया गया इन द पास्ट. फिर जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस एक IMF प्रोग्राम में जाना जब मुल्क का बहुत बुरा हाल है, उसको क्रिटिसाइज करना. पेट्रोल की प्राइसेस को बढ़ाना, ये एक मसला है जो एक we are such a small player in the international scheme of things कि हम प्राइस को इन्फ्लुएंस तक नहीं कर सकते, हमारी क्वांटम इतनी छोटी है. But these things are politicized a lot, so I feel there are lots of things that also need to be deregulated. So चलो State Bank Independence Act से हमें एक सुकून तो हो गया कि स्टेट बैंक ऑटोनोमस बॉडी की तरह काम करेगा. बट ऑन द अदर हैंड देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ थिंग्स टू लुक एट. फ्यूल प्राइसेस नीड टू बी डीरेगुलेटेड. टैक्स बेस को आपको बढ़ाना है क्योंकि आपको अपने इन्फ्लोज बढ़ाना है. आपको जो है क्या कहते हैं, अब आपकी जो इन्वेस्टमेंट हो, इट शुड बी बियॉन्ड मेकिंग रोड्स, it should be beyond making flyovers. Things like education, schooling, these are things that we need to invest on significantly. Policy making में एक कंसिस्टेंसी नहीं है. आज पॉलिसी निकलेगी कि फ्रीलांसर्स के लिए टैक्स नहीं है, फिर कल निकलेगी नहीं इनके ऊपर टैक्स लगा दो, परसों निकलेगी नहीं इनके ऊपर कम कर दो. एक significant level of instability. So I think the crux of the problem for Pakistan is the instability that we face. The minute you take away this instability, Pakistan heads back on the right path. So jahan hamare mulk mein hum, but again, as Shahzad Roy has really nicely pointed out, बचपन में से मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि मुल्क एक नाजुक मरहले पे है, नाजुक मोड़ से गुजर रहा है. वो मोड़ खत्म ही नहीं हो रहा. It's like a roundabout now. So he's absolutely right about this कि ये नाजुक मोड़ खत्म हो जाना चाहिए. We should move beyond it. But these issues stay significant. But also एक और मसला हमारे मुल्क में अब आजकल ये आ रहा है, which is brain drain. People like you and me, the minute we grow up, हम कुछ बन जाते हैं या क्या, हम बोलते हैं यार इस मुल्क से निकलना है, कभी वापस नहीं आना है. This is the biggest problem because countries like Canada, countries like Australia, they developed because they brought in the best talent from across the world. People, हमारे लोग जाके उनके मुल्क को, जहाँ वो मुल्क है, उन्होंने उन मुल्कों को वाक किया है. But it also shows that a sign of desperateness and sign of hopelessness from the country कि यार यहाँ तो अब कुछ नहीं होने वाला. Leaving your country is a big thing. Leaving people that you know, leaving some place that you've grown up, it's a big thing. I think brain drain itself is a huge issue that our country is facing. And if we keep disappointing the youth, the brain drain is going to go worse. And then you've got no one to build the country once the brain drain happens. शुक्र ये है कि startup ecosystem की वजह से कुछ पाकिस्तानीज़ वापस आ रहे हैं पाकिस्तान को बनाने के लिए. But let's hope that continues and we have good talent coming in with the right experiences.
I think it basically brings us back to that very point कि stability की ज़रूरत है. And in order to create the right environment, so people do not end up becoming disenfranchised कि भाई यार यहाँ पे तो कोई उम्मीद नहीं है, things are going to stay the way they are. And so out of sheer desperation, people are going to be making that decision over and over again. Different kinds of individuals are going to be making that decision कि यार यहाँ वो नवीद ही हमें नहीं मिलेगी कि मतलब things are going to.
I mean, Osama, have you ever thought about moving abroad?
I mean, seriously, if I were to disclose, yes, of course, क्यों नहीं, जाहिर है जब
I mean everyone regardless of whether it's a joke or not has mentioned it.
Of course, it hurts you. First of all, it literally does hurt you. Okay, bhai, why would you want to in the first place?
Why do I leave home?
Exactly. You have your.
Why should I?
You've spent nearly all your life over here. You've known your people over here, and you have.
Why should I leave home?
Exactly.
Because a boomer ruined it for me.
Of course. And then the worst part is nobody's, willing to accept that responsibility. That, things did not things did not go the way they should have.
I would.
और फिर
I'm sorry
on
for
top
cutting
of
you
it,
off.
मैं sorry मैं तुम्हारी बात भी काट रहा हूँ. मतलब ये realization नहीं है कि यार we need to pass the baton on to the next generation. कि यार go ahead, man. And go ahead, guys and girls, just go ahead and fix this trouble for us.
So the funny thing is, our politicians mess up, and that's completely fine. They mess up around the world. How about you come up and go like, हाँ, आज मेरे अजीज हमवतनों, आज मैं आपको बताऊंगा what we did wrong and now what we're going to do to correct it. Yeah. What my government did wrong. I would love to hear that. And as far as passing it on to the next generation in a country जहाँ politics इतनी dynastic है, जहाँ पे lineage से चलती है, I don't think anyone cares.
I agree. I don't want to take the conversation over there here, but you've certainly got a.
I mean, it is political families, regardless of what party you're talking about. Political families exist, try on the bigger level, try on a smaller level. Like even in a UC level, मेरा बाप इस सीट पे खड़ा हुआ था, आज मैं इस सीट पे खड़ा हूँगा. It exists.
Exactly.
The biggest, the smallest, and these problems persist, and वो चलता रहता है.
मेरे ख्याल में politically that culture certainly needs to be disrupted. Like
yeah.
It's just as the same way जिस तरह से होता है ना कि एक startup आती है और वो सारे landscape को एक खास industry.
Incumbents.
Yeah.
Fintech in Pakistan has given banks a lot of pressure because banks ने अपने customer service को इतना अच्छा नहीं रखा हुआ और fintech से क्या आप मैसेज पे उनसे बात करो, आपका प्रॉब्लम एक सेकंड में हल हो रहा है. बैंक्स आपको 10 मिनट तक होल्ड पे लगाए हैं. So this shows you the power of the youth, the power of new thought, the power of revolutionizing things, which shows that there is chance for change if you give enough space for a disruptor to come in.
Yeah. Ariba, before we wrap up, just a couple of questions. मुझे जरा ये एक चीज बताओ कि पाकिस्तान में जब investments की बात आती है, both at the individual level and at the macro level, what do you think do we need to change when it comes to our behavior in terms of investments? माशाल्लाह से हम देख रहे हैं पिछले चंद सालों में, although ठीक है, it may have had a good thing for the economy in the short term, but is tarah ki terms like our economy is more oriented towards being Plotistan, where people throw in a lot of money in real estate. जब लोगों के पास savings हैं, तो how could we create an enabling environment जिसमें वो उन जगहों पे invest कर रहे हों where it is actually creating value for other people also, and not just for a certain period of time, but in a far more sustainable fashion. वो किस तरह से किया जा सकता है?
So I'll answer this question in two parts. One is जो investment आती है हमारी, let's say in startups, we need to realize कि ये investment जो आ रही है, that is for the startup itself. It's not something to celebrate. It's not like, because हमारे मुल्क में cheerleaders बहुत हैं, हमारे वज़ीर आज़म, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Planning, सब tweet करे, oh my God, we congratulate the startup for raising so and so amount of cash. I think that needs to stop because that makes it seem like it's something on a sovereign level. It's basically money for a startup to use for its operations.
Yep.
So एक तो ये चीज़ है, operational money को हम लोग crazy thank you
convert their startup into a profitable enterprise basically.
Yeah, so it's basically operating money and it's not something just आप thank you करो यार. एक ये चीज़ है, तो हमारी जो foreign inflows पे thank you की आदत है, this needs to stop. We need to stop thinking that people are doing us a favor. They're investing in us because they like us. That's right. it. That's it. We don't need to thank them. They're not doing us a favor. They think it's a good return on their money. As far as the other part of your question is concerned, कि ये जो investment avenues in terms of Plotistan और ये सब है, Plotistan seems like one of the most stable returns because आपको appreciation ही मिल रही होती है, and if you buy a piece of property itself, you could earn rent and get appreciation. It's a very good thing to do for someone who has a lot of extra money lying around. And one is because it's very undocumented in the sense कि जो property prices होती हैं वो actually जो market price होती है, that is never actually fully disclosed. You never pay taxes on the market price. तो एक तरह से आप इस तरह से भी बच रहे होते हो एंड आपको इट्स अ वेरी सब्जेक्टिव थिंग तो आप बिकॉज हमारे प्राइसिंग सिस्टम भी काफी सब्जेक्टिव है कि अगर हाँ ये घर मुझे अच्छा लगा I'll pay more for it based on what an average house in this area is for. Things like this also come into play. तो एक reason ये है, but on the other hand there are lots of other things to look at as well because इतना मुश्किल है operate करना as a business in the country at some times where there's so many roadblocks that you face because one, you don't have the right connections that can help you get a task done. You don't have the right what do you call it, sources. You don't have the right experience. You don't have the right institutions that can help you learn. So there's so many issues on this side कि एक entrepreneurial spirit जो है पाकिस्तान में वो भी कम हो जाता है. तो जब ये चीजें सारी कम है तो फिर लोग जो है ना एक नॉन प्रोडक्टिव एसेट क्लास के अंदर इन्वेस्ट कर रहे होते हैं क्योंकि उनको लग रहा होता है देखो मेरे पैसे सेफ हैं, मेरे इस पैसे का कुछ नहीं होने वाला. तो until and unless we don't show people different avenues to invest in, until and unless we don't make it seem lucrative, or चलो आप lucrative नहीं कर सकते, until and unless you don't make Plotistan seem unlucrative or not as lucrative as before. आप discourage करो कि एक बंदा अपने पैसे इतने significant amount of money एक खाली plot पे लगा दे जहाँ से कोई value addition नहीं हो रहा. You need to make it difficult for that person to be like, हाँ यार ये rational decision है. मतलब एक rational उस investor की rationality के साथ आप खेलो because at the end of the day the investor does not care where he's investing. The investor cares about its return and the safety of its return. So that needs to be worked on.
उसके लिए तो इसका मतलब है reforms करने की जरूरत होगी. What areas would you think you know when it comes to expanding our pie, मतलब when it comes to creating more revenue streams and also at the same time governance के लिहाज से ऐसे कौन से changes करने की जरूरत है ताकि investment in other avenues for people seems relatively far more lucrative than investing in plots and real estate only.
So
how do you do that?
The number of companies that are listed on the Pakistan Stock Exchange, which is an amalgamation of Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, is less than the number of companies listed on one of India's exchange or one of Bangladesh's exchanges.
Repeat that figure if you could, please.
So I'll send you the exact number. You can put it like in text or whatever. Okay. But Pakistan Stock Exchange makes up Islamabad Stock Exchange, Karachi Stock Exchange, Lahore Stock Exchange. तीनों को merge करके Pakistan Stock Exchange बना दिया. India में there are multiple exchanges. जितने Pakistan Stock Exchange में companies हैं, उतने India के Stock Exchange एक I forgot the name of one. उससे कम है. So one of theirs has more than the three of ours combined. Same case with Bangladesh.
Okay. Wow.
Which shows you कि वहाँ पे lots of companies are listed. Pakistan में lots of companies are not listed. Listed companies prove to be an avenue of investment. Or again, transparency की यहाँ भी ज़रूरत है. एक minority investor को ये पता होना चाहिए कि मेरे shares, मेरे investment is being used in the right way. एक confidence होना चाहिए. तो इस confidence से जो है investment बढ़ सकती है in a productive sector. But until and unless we don't have structural reforms on the stock exchange, the SEC to make stuff like this, एक वो होता है. Financial literacy बढ़ाना पड़ता है. Stock exchange में इतने सालों में, over the years, we have less than 300,000 people invested. Say it. 300,000 is not even 1% of Pakistan's population. That is how significant it is. And the people that are invested, you कौन होंगे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा इसकी composition देखो, they're the people that are these industrialists themselves. तो एक ये भी चीज़ है. तो एक आम बंदे को लगता है कि मैं stock exchange में लगाऊंगा तो सट्टा है, वो ये है. These things need to be fixed, and there are lots of ways to do this. To be very honest, there are lots of out-of-the-box ways to do this. हमारी ISPR जो है, it takes out videos and movies and TV shows to create awareness about the struggles of the army. इसी तरह से, let's say the stock exchange makes up a movie or something about a guy that played his cards right and made good money. आप एक informal educational series बना दो YouTube पे. people in Pakistan, and I'm sure you would agree with this because of podcasts, whatever, people in Pakistan like quality content. They just don't get quality content. That is the problem. I mean, there's so many there's so many podcasts out there that provide quality content. Unke views ko dekho, kitne zabardast hote hain. There are lots of out-of-the-box solutions. So stock exchange investment is one avenue. Just government ne itne saalon mein usko nahi kiya. And again, I spoke to a lot of people at the stock exchange as well. They're like, yaar, jab tak hamare paas playing field nahi hogi, to hum kaise karenge? आप प्रॉपर्टी को इतना आसान बनाते हो for someone to just park their money there, then why would someone go through the hassle of researching कौन सा stock लूं, कैसे लूं, क्या करूं? Why would someone go through the hassle? That is one thing. क्योंकि जब तक property will be treated like a commodity जो trade होती है, you will never have a viable financial market going up. एक दूसरी चीज ये है कि investments के लिए हमारे पास courts होने चाहिए, financial courts जिनको आता है ये financial rulings करना, corporate courts basically, to solve issues if and when they occur. For instance, if you make an investment, it does not go well and you want to challenge it, you should be able to go into court and the judges should be able to know what these terms are. हमारे judges जो हैं, मतलब respected judges, they're not all corporate lawyers that turn into judges. There are very few that are. So the nuances are lost in translation. ये एक issue है जो हमारे मुल्क में corporate judges, corporate laws और corporate courts की एक ज़रूरत है कि remedy भी हो. तो if we circle back to what I said earlier, startups were able to raise a lot of money in Pakistan because regulatory structures changed where. So startups were allowed to set up holding companies and operating companies. Holding companies abroad, operating companies in Pakistan. So the holding companies की वजह से उनको ये feel होने लगा, चलो सही है. If there is some problem, we can set ourselves in a jurisdiction जहाँ पे हमें remedy मिलेगी. This is what is missing in Pakistan. कि मतलब आपको remedy पाकिस्तान के अंदर ही मिलनी चाहिए.
So basically,
you need this for investment.
So अगर मैं government के end पे कहूँ, like 2 to 3 things before we wrap up, what would you suggest कि उनको क्या करने की ज़रूरत है?
So one is we need to look at the government's conflict itself. कहाँ उनके internal interest lie करते हैं, उसको निकाल के आगे की सोचें. So in order to increase revenue streams, you've got to look at ways to tax the untaxed, tax the taxed, and you've also got to find ways to make sure that the taxes that you're doing are not regressive in nature, especially on those that find it hard to pay. And then if you are making tough tax decisions, then there needs to be some sort of welfare thing out there to provide remedy to those that are hit by it the most. तो जो rebates आपके बड़े-बड़े industrialists को मिलते हैं, आप शायद उनको सोचें कि उनको मिलने चाहिए या एक आम बंदे को एक tax refund मिलना चाहिए. That is one question the government to ask itself. When you do things like this, and when people see their tax being used well and them being compensated back, they will be more likely to pay taxes. In order to increase your exports, what you've got to do right now is, aajkal to you can't really increase it without increasing your imports, but the government should set up long-term targets for industries. Or बोल दें देखो आज आप 15% what do you call localization पे हो, आप इसको बढ़ा दो. आप 10 साल के अंदर आप इसको 40% कर दो. You set targets for them. उस targets के हिसाब से you could set up stick and carrot approach कर सकते हो. या तो आप carrot कर दो कि इतने दिन तक we'll give you this rebate or we'll give you this concession, or if you don't do this then you'll have to pay more tax than other people because आपसे हमारा current account deficit बढ़ रहा है because you haven't been able to set up your industry. So this is one way that the government could do that. Another way that the government could increase our exports is not really the government or the private sector itself needs to look at things that are unique to Pakistan, that are our things, that are things that we make really well, that we do really well, and it's a value add करें. In the past, हमने बहुत देखा था pink salt जो है, Pakistani pink salt would be mined and then it would be sent to India. India would pack it. Dubai में बिकता था. मतलब it was a lost opportunity. There's so many things that are indigenous to Pakistan जो हम नहीं utilize कर पाते. I mean, think about it this way. Pakistani mangoes are amazing. All right. How many mango products do we make other than achar?
Oh, that's very true.
Not really.
Being coming from a family, that actually does farm mangoes, I'll certainly relate to you.
I mean, what do we make? We make achar from mangoes. And also the third thing that Pakistan needs to do, it needs to brand itself. Like Thai food all around the world, it's so especially wo branding. Korean music has been able to help Korea a lot. Like now Korean food, like which was Samyang noodles and itne popular ho gaye just because of Korean K-pop. Things like this are really important for Pakistan. I don't know, like hamare Pakistani achar could be branded a separate way. It tastes different than the Indian one. We need to differentiate ourselves. We need to differentiate our products. So the third thing is branding, which is again on the businesses. Hamare businesses value add nahi karte. They make a generic product, they sell it. And वो बाहर के लोग उस पे फायदा उठा लेते हैं, हम ऐसे ही बैठे रहते हैं. Because value addition is what brings in premiums.
True.
And that is what is important. आप एक टी-शर्ट बनाओ, एक सादी सी टी-शर्ट, उसको आप बेचो $5 की, उसके ऊपर अब एक ब्रांड का टैग लग गया, वो ब्रांड बेच रहा है $50 की. आपको तो फायदा नहीं हुआ ना, वो $50 की बिके या क्या बिके. You have nothing in that pie. You get your $5 and you're good to go. So I think we really need to, I mean, Pakistani clothing around the world, people are fans of our clothing. And aajkal to waise bhi, you know, what dresses ka style chal raha hai, ki like people are wearing long flowy clothes like we do in Pakistan. We could sell that. Our prints are crazy good. Our fabric is amazing. There's so much to do, but we just focus on bare minimum karo aur niklo. That's it.
Yeah, that's very true. And you know, there's so much to talk about, Ariba. I think I'll have you for another second round sometime.
When I'm in Islamabad.
Oh, definitely. And you know, but unfortunately, I think we'll have to just wrap up our conversation here. But thank you so much. You know, it was so insightful and it was really out of the box. You know, I'm glad we did cover a lot of areas in a far more nuanced way. And I hope our audience inko dekhengi, they'll certainly benefit from it. And guys, if you have any comments, if you have any feedback, don't forget to give that in the comment section below. And so we look forward to hearing from you. And Ariba, thank you once again. And
thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all ours. Take care. Bye-bye.